Hi, everyone. Thank you so much all for being here. It's really nice to see so many people. Last year, we had the largest site for the Global Game Jam in London, and I hope that this year will be the same. So please keep coming. Keep people coming. So, well, as you probably can see, my name is Zucconi, and before I start talking about the topic I want to discuss, I just want to tell you a little bit more about where I am and what I do. So I've been working on and off in the game industry for about 10 years, and I've been working in computer science and software engineering for about 20 years, which, it sounds quite a long time for me, unfortunately. As some of you know, I'm working here at Goldsmiths. I'm teaching Introduction to Programming, mostly Unity. I'm also teaching Game AI programming, again, mostly Unity. So you can see a pattern here, probably. But I also work as an independent game developer, and I'm working on a few games. The latest one was Picunico, which is a very weird game. You are this sort of red potato that kicks stuff. Very, very weird. I didn't come with the idea, though. So don't blame me, but it's on Nintendo Switch. It's been doing quite well. So leave a good review, please. Since 2015, I also wrote a few hundreds of education tutorials. And well, in my spare time, if I still have any. And I think that, to be fair, a lot of the knowledge that I currently have, the skills that I currently have, they come through other people. They come through people that spend their career, their lives, writing tutorials and teaching me how to do things, whether that was in person or whether this was online. So I feel that I own a lot of the person and the programmer and the lecturer that I am to all of those people. So to me, I sort of felt, in a way, the need to return the favor and share a bit of my knowledge to allow other people to get, the skills that I have. And I feel that that is something that I always, been trying to do. And I think that, indeed, one of my main drives, I think, not just as a content creator, but as a lecturer, has always been being able to help other people, whether in person or online, with writing content. I think that, personally, we're all here today to make games, and I feel that there are so many of you that want to get more experience, want to get more knowledge. And I think there's something, really glad for me is that we have some of the most passionate lecturers here at Goldsmiths working in games, trying to support you. So if you see any of us, can you raise your hand? just getting, just call us and hopefully we can help us with your game. We will try to be around for all the 3 days, and we're more than welcome, to try to support you. Whatever you want to do, whether it's a board game, whether it's a traditional game, whether it's some weird alternative controller, just come to us and hopefully we can help you. So I think that we should also thank, of course, the Hacksmith that are organizing the space and basically take care of most of the organization. So please, a big clap for them. I think that nothing here would have been possible today without their contributions. I think it's really great that they've been taking time off their studies to do this. And thank you so much. Now, because we have so much support. I mean, this is a college after all, so we teach as a job. So hopefully we will be able to help you. I think that I'm fairly confident that you will all manage to succeed on some level at making a game. So I think that I could have probably given a talk about, a workshop about shaders or some shit like that, right? But I felt that probably, you have enough support today and for the rest of this weekend to achieve whatever you want. So I wanted to help you, but hopefully in a different way. I wanted to talk about something that is maybe not related to technical stuff, but that I hope will still help you to achieve whatever you want to do. And I know that for most of you, this will be a weekend that is fueled by, I don't know, junk food and probably lack of sleep, trying to debug your game, 5 minutes before the end of the jam. But I think that for some of you, this is probably going to be the start of a new chapter. And I don't say this as a joke. As Gorm was saying before, there are many games that came out of the Global Game Jam that turn out to be commercial successes and indeed change people's life. What you see here is Through, was made at a Global Game Jam in 2014, and the theme was the very ambiguous, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And in the game, basically, you project your shape inside the game, and through your shape, you connect to a different world. And you can use that as a sort of double platforming between two different universes of dimensions, if that makes sense. Through has been a very successful game. It's also probably the only Kinect game that makes sense. I mean, not that, is people still using Kinect? Is still alive? I don't know. But, at the time, making a Kinect game sounded like a good idea, right? Maybe looking backward. But the developer making Through were actually picked up by Microsoft. They got a deal with them. So it turns out to be, a very good success for them. And although Through is a weird game, is a rather exceptional game, I don't think it is an exception by any means. Another game that was very successful was Gods Will Be Watching, again, 2014, although a different game jam, not the Global Game Jam, but Ludum Dare. Ludum Dare, depends which flavor you want to call it. The theme this time was minimalism, and the game was indeed rather minimalistic. They got a deal with Devolver, very successfully, still a very beloved title. Again, other games that became quite successful and probably you might have played, we have Titan Souls from 2015. The game jam you only had one, and so you're this tiny chap and you only have one arrow and all the enemies have one hit point. So you constantly have this feel that is like, yes, like last point, last fight. So really, really successful. Again, Devolver title. I don't know if you got 1 million downloads yet, but if not, it's probably close. And of course, I'm showing games that in their own have been relatively successful, but the reason why I'm showing is because I too was privileged enough to have a game that started in a game jam ended up being a commercial title, whatever that means. It's on Steam. I think that's what people mean for commercial. That's the most agreed definition of commercial title, I guess. And again, it was from the You Only Get One, Ludum Dare game jam. And my idea was that, when you launch stuff in space, you only have one chance. Otherwise, they get lost, they explode. So it's a sort of weird space game where you launch stuff and you have to find, the right orbit or get into the planets where you want to do. Now, in hindsight, it probably would have been better not making this game in Flash, because now it's dead and I can't change it anymore. I would have loved to update it, but, well, I guess, So I think, don't make a game in Flash, thank you. No, no, there's more. So I think that if you look back at all those games, but, the other many more that managed to come out of the Global Game Jam or other game jam and has been somehow successful, I think that what makes them a massive example of success is the fact that nobody, not even their developers, not even me, expected those games to do anything but, dying at the end of the Global Game Jam. So in a way, I think that this is a good reflection, because maybe it's nothing more than a reflection on success itself, on the meaning of success itself. And in a way, I can try to define success, not just for me, but for games in general, things you do in general, as your ability to meet, if not exceeding, your own expectation. And I think that all the games I've been showing were definitely doing that. But I think that this also opens up something really interesting, because when you make something, it is you that sets your own expectation. You decide what you want to make. You decide what the thing is supposed to do and how big you want it to be. So in a way, you decide what success means, not just for you, but for your game. And I think that this is quite an interesting thing. Now, hopefully all of you will manage to make a game, but if you're here today thinking, oh, well, it's easy to make a game and have success, so, I want my game that I do today to sell 1 million copies. Well, you're likely to be very disappointed. Sorry to say that. I haven't sold 1 million copies yet with Vitalis, but I don't think I ever will. But, the game has been successful regardless of that. But I think that if you approach this event in a different way and you set up something more realistic, maybe surviving this weekend with a game that you're proud of and you had fun making and you learn a lot, then I think that you will be indeed very successful at the end of this global game jam. And this, might seem a bit cheeky because it's like, well, then you're not really defining success. You're just sort of lowering your expectation, lowering your standard. But I do not think that's the case. I think that the key for success is being able to have unrealistic expectation and to fight, the urge of like making something enormous and gigantic. And I think that this is probably the first trap, the first point at which many game developers and many students as well tends to fail when they approach game developments for the first time. And I think that because this is so common, there's a very clear reason. There must be a mechanism, something that makes this type of failure so common, so obvious. And for me, it's the fact that we only see game through the lens of success. We only see, we only play, we only hear the games that make it. But for any game that we play, there's probably 1,000 that dies. Not the developers, hopefully, but there's probably thousands of games that never made it. And because of that, you never heard of them. And this is very problematic because it's skewing the perception of how easy it is to make a game, because we only hear about certain stories, the stories that actually make it. Just to give you an idea of how hard it is, so I believe that you're probably all familiar with this game, who have heard about this game before. Okay, so you probably know. So how many people do you think worked on this game? A few, yeah? How many? 200 something. More, 800. How many, sorry? So how long do you think it took to make this game? 3,000 years. Even more. So, Googling around, trying to look on Wikipedia, 3,000 people for 8 years. Well, I mean, I don't think it's 3,000 years for 8 years. I think it's 8 years and in total. It's not 3,000 people for 8 years at any time. I think that would be a bit too much. But, undoubtedly this was one of the best game releases in 2018. But now you know the cost of that game. Now we know how long it takes. And I think this probably gives you a perception. Do you have 8 years? Do you have 3,000 people in your team? Probably not. So don't aim for that. Don't try to make something like that, because very likely it's not what you have the budget for, whether that is money, people, expertise, time. And I think the global game jam are very good at giving you, such a small amount. And I think that something quite interesting is that if you go on YouTube, you can find the end of this game, and it's 34 minutes of credits rolling. Like, this talk is 20 minutes. So I think, it puts things into perspective. Now, because we only see things that are successful, this is something that has been studied quite a lot, not just in software engineering, but in psychology as well. And it's very well connected to something that a lot of you might have heard as the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's this idea that when you approach something new, whether it's a new subject or whether it's game development, then, well, because you're new, you don't really know what you don't know. You don't know yet what you're signing for. So your confidence tends to be very high. And it's only when you realize, oh my God, what have I done? Making game is hard, that you realize how much you don't really know. So there is this problem of being overconfident when you don't really know your subject. And if you start in something new, like probably making games for many of you, the risk is underestimating how complex and how hard and how challenging it is to make a game. So I think that the first trap is having a realistic expectation. And the Dunning-Kruger effect plays a big role in that. So how do we combat that? How do we fight that? Well, personally, the only thing that I really believe is able to fight unrealistic expectation is spreadsheets. Or, well, let me explain it. Is the fact that you need to learn how long it takes you to do something. And spreadsheets probably the quickest way to do that. Every time you make a game, every time you're spending time working on a project, try to record, to take a note of all the things you're doing. How long does it take for you to make a game? How long does it take you to draw some art, to write some code, to model an object, a 3D object? All those things are things that you need to learn how long it takes you, because you need to learn how to deliver stuff and how long it takes you. And I think that a common mistake that people do is trying to maximizing your delivery. You're trying to make things as quickly as possible. This usually doesn't work. I can tell you by experience and by the experience of many of my students, trying to maximizing your delivery does not work. So what else does? What else works? Well, it's maximizing your confidence of delivery. How confidently can you deliver? Can you tell me you're going to deliver something? If you're very confident in what you can deliver, and you get the timing right, the budget right, then you can make everything with every kind of budget that you have, whether it's a big game or whether it's a small global game jam like the one we're going to do today. And this is such an important difference that actually we have today. And so spreadsheets probably might be a good way to do that by now. Any other tool you have to record your time and what you're doing, works for me. And I think that what you want to do here in making sure that you don't overpromise to you, to your lecturers, to your team members, to your friends, so that you do not underdeliver. And I think that this is connected to another very tricky subject, which is called imposter syndrome. Now, something that might happen is that while you're making games, you see the tables, you're looking around, and suddenly you see someone else way ahead of you. Probably you just have an idea and they already have a prototype. They're already writing the credits for the games. And you started panicking. And I think that that's something that happens very often, especially when we are working in things like games that are very graphical. You can see immediately, one frame, you see how polished they are and how good they feel, just by looking at the other side of the room. So it will be very easy for you to have this feeling of, oh God, what have I done? My thing is not working. And so it might fuel this sense of not being good enough. It might fuel this sense of, oh my God, why did I sign up for this? Maybe I shouldn't have done it. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this thing. This is known as imposter syndrome, and I think that a lot of you probably have heard of that. And it comes from this idea that you're an imposter. Everybody here knows more than you, and they haven't realized yet that you're not a real game developer. And they will find out, and they will kick you out, and they will ask you, oh, can you make this? And you won't be able to make this. Panic. It's a very common feeling. It's a feeling that most people have at some point in their life. If they don't, they're terrible people. And it's something that I too have a lot. As you've seen from my first slides, I publish a lot of online content. And especially on Twitter, you see people making content faster than me, better than me, more polygons, more shaders, more colors. Oh God, panic attacks. So it's something very common. And I think that it spawns overall by this trap of comparing yourself to others. This is something very dangerous. And what makes it dangerous is that, look at yourself here. If you try to compare with any of you, how do you know it's a fair comparison? I've been working and been making computer games for 10, 15 years. So, well, of course, if you're just starting, you will not be as fast in making a game as I can be. But this doesn't mean that I am better than you. It just means that I have more experience. So if you look at someone, if you look at something, if you look at a game, you're missing that bit. You do not know the stories of the people making that. You do not know how long it took them to be that good. And this is problematic because you only see how good something is, not the journey that it took to be that good, which probably is 15 years of practice. So do not try to compare yourself to others because you lack that pieces of information that will sort of make that into a fair comparison. So what do we do? I think that the best way is to compare yourself to a younger yourself, in a sense that, have you been learning something? Do not try to compare how much you've learned by how other people have achieved. Compare to yourself. How much did you achieve? If you managed to learn something, even something very little today, then you succeeded. You make something, it was an experience worth doing, regardless whether or not people succeeded more than you in the same context. So this is something that I think it's worth taking into account. Now, another problem that might happen while you're working on the game jam is that maybe you're very focused on your work, you're very focused on making what you do perfect, and you might end up in the trap of perfectionism, the trap of getting stuck and not wanting to let go of any tiny details of your game. Now, this might be cool if you have an infinite amount of time. I think we have less than 3 days. So it's very hard to be a perfectionist. And it's very likely that if you are a perfectionist, you will fail. So it won't be perfect by any metrics that you can imagine. So what I would suggest you is, especially in a context where time is so limited, is this something good enough? Move on to the next thing, because you do not have enough time to make everything as perfect as probably you would like to be. And after all, I think that something that resonates with me is when I was talking with Sony and it was taking me a bit too long to finish one of my games. And, the idea is that a finished game is better than an incomplete masterpiece. Because if your game is not complete, nobody will play it. Nobody will ever heard of it. But if your game is finished, there is a chance for it to succeed and to attract some audience. If you never manage to finish a game, well, is it a game? Yes, it is, but but probably, it's not. It doesn't, comply with the definition of success that you might want to imagine. And I think that this leads, to another problem. When we have a game that is as good as the one I showed you before, Red Dead Redemption 2, then the problem is, how much man work did it take? Not just in terms of hours, but in terms of sacrifice to make something that looks so perfect, that look so well crafted, even in the most minute detail. This is a quote. Oh, you can't read anything. God, this is supposed to be a quote from the rockstar vice president. And he said that we were working 100 hours weeks several times in 2018. Now, if you do a quick division, it turns out that if you work Monday to Friday, it's 20 hours a day. Or if you work every day in a week, it's 14 hours, which is probably more likely to be. So this is way, way beyond what people should work before going on fire. And I think in a way, it is a dark side of success, especially many successful titles that we see in the industry. And this can be a sort of very dangerous cycle where you're under-delivering, you're not delivering fast enough, you're not making the content as much as you want, so you're starting feeling a bit inadequate because you see other people making it. So you try to make up for it by overworking, working more, working faster, and then you don't sleep, you don't eat, you go crazy. And so, of course you under-deliver, you haven't slept for 3 days. Well, guess what? You really can't write code after, if you don't sleep. And so this is very well known as stress culture, the idea that this loop, it's often promoted in many workplaces, maybe even here sometimes, and hopefully not if you're a student. But it's something that is often romanticized a lot in media. And I think that the best example I can imagine is Indie Game, the movie. Has anybody seen it? Okay, no, not the hands are going up. So it's a game that follows a few developers doing, the development of the games. It shows all the struggle, the mental health struggle, the financial struggle they had while making those titles. And, in the end, all those games were super successful, millions of copies sold. So, in a way, it was a happy ending-ish. But I think that what games like these promote, this idea that if you really work hard for something, whatever that is, you can really achieve it. And I'm not technically against that, but I think the problem is the opposite. What if you don't achieve what you want? maybe means that you haven't worked hard enough. Maybe it means that you haven't remortgaged your house yet, so you didn't really believe in that, right? And I think that it's a sort of the American dream in reverse. It's not the fact that you can achieve everything, but the fact that if you haven't achieved anything, it's your fault. And ultimately, it's on you. And I think that it can fuel a lot of stress, especially if you're prone to a bit of unsteady mental health. And global game jams, well, game jams in general, they can put a lot of pressure on people. And so it's something you should be aware of, because it's something that it's a feeling you might experience at some point while you're working on these. And I think that, in a way, now that I'm a developer and I've been through most of those things myself, I recognize that the stories inside indie game, the movies, they're not exceptional because despite everything they made it, they're exceptional because despite working with such a terrible work ethics, they didn't die. That is ultimately what makes those stories worth telling for. They're warnings, and I want them to be seen as such. They're warnings. Do not destroy your life to make games, even if those games end up to be amazing and selling millions of copies, because you might not recover, like it happened to some of the people that are in this movie. And, I think that if you succeeded in making a game, but you die in the process, then ultimately you have failed because you didn't make this into a sustainable career. It's not a sustainable job that you can keep doing. So maybe you failed in being a game developer if you only made one and you died, in the process. And I think we should stop romanticizing this idea of overworking and stress culture. So how do we combat that? How do we fight that? I think that the simplest advice I can give you is food and sleep. They are part of the development. When you're making a project, when you're accounting for, when you're planning, when you're scheduling for the hours you need to work on your game, food and sleep are something that needs to be timetabled. So do not forget, if you're thinking you can work for 3 days in a row, no, you're not. What happens is that you will work a lot, but you will achieve very, very little. So, yeah. Hopefully. But I think the point is look after yourself, because you can be much more productive if you're well rested and if you're well fed. We have beds and food. I'm not sure they probably the most healthy snacks and the most comfortable beds, but make sure that you're looking after yourself and don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to take breaks, even if the rest of your team does not. You do you. So if you don't feel comfortable, if you feel too tired, if you feel hungry, stop it. Sleep, walk around the campus, it's lovely. I hope so. I hope people think so. Get some food, get some biscuits, we have tea, we have coffee, I hope. And try to look after yourself. And after that, probably your mind will be, it will be much more rested, and hopefully, especially if you're writing code, I can assure there will be many fewer bugs that, if you just haven't slept. So I think that, for today, probably I've talked more than enough. I just wish you the best of luck with your game, and please go make something awesome. Thank you so much.